Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to learn algebra. Today is our lesson number 155. Day 155, we are in the process of solving word problems from day 101 through 200. Today is our 55th day. Let's see what we have for today. What I have for today actually is a very simple concept, which something that we already talked about at least once or twice. I want to talk about it one more time, which is the concept of writing an even number and an odd number in the language of algebra. For example, if somebody comes up to you and says, I have some unknown quantity, some number, any old number in algebra is represented with a variable, usually, traditionally with an x. Doesn't have to be x. This is some unknown, y is some unknown, so is this one, a is some unknown, and so is this one, n is some unknown. It could be anything. It doesn't even have to be, it could be alpha, it could be beta, it could be anything. These are all unknown, some variable, some number. Now, if I ask you to give me an even number, and you simply say, well, let's pretend that x is an even number. Well, how do you know x is an even number? What if the value of the x, by doing the problem, which you do, turns out that the nature of the problem is such that x turns out to be 7. If x turns out to be 7, then it's not an even number. So in the language of algebra, to make sure that a given quantity is an even number is something that's divisible by 2. That is the definition of even number. Or I should say uneven number, not a even number. Uneven number is something that is evenly divisible by 2. This is something very basic. We shouldn't have to point it out, but we're learning how to write it in the language of the algebra. Now, how do we go about making sure that this some unknown quantity is in fact divisible by 2? Well, the way the mathematicians do it, the way we do it in the language of algebra is, we take that unknown quantity, and we do not represent an even number like that. We take that quantity, whatever it is, we do not know how much x is, and we multiply it by 2. So now it doesn't matter what x turns out to be. If x turns out to be 7, 7 times 2 is even. If x turned out to be 6, which was even to begin with, but we have no way of knowing ahead of time, but we still multiply it by 2. So it doesn't matter whether x is odd or even. Now it does not matter if x turns out to be odd or even. We know 2 times x is going to be even, In essence, we are forcing it to be even. We are making it, we are forcing it. Even if it's 7, by multiplying that quantity by 2, we are forcing that 7 to turn into an even number. 2 times 7 is even number. So anyway, the long and the short of it is that in the language of algebra, if somebody asks you to represent an even number is something that is evenly divisible by 2. Therefore, an even number in the language of algebra is represented as 2 times x, or 2 times y, or 2 times a, or 2 times whatever it is, n. It's always represented as 2 times some unknown. That is an even number. Question is, how do you represent an odd number? Again, the same story goes all over again. The same story, I don't want to erase anything here, but the same story is going to go all over again, which is, if I were to say, give me an odd number, some unknown quantity odd number, and you say x, well, how do you know x is odd? X could turn out to be 6. X could turn out to be 10, in which case it's not odd. So how do I make sure, how do I force it, how do I ensure 100% of the time that the quantity that I'm using to represent this unknown odd number, I know it's odd number, I don't know what it is, but I know it has to be odd. How do I make sure that this unknown quantity is in fact odd? The way we do that is, first we multiply by 2. And by doing so, we are forcing it to turn into an even number. And then we add 1 to it. There you go, that's all it is. So, an odd number is something that is not divisible by 2. It's going to have a remainder of 1. Anyway, so I'm going to leave this alone. This applies to the even number. But an odd number in the language of algebra is represented as 2x plus 1, 2y plus 1, 2a plus 1, 2n plus 1. Now it doesn't matter if x turns out to be odd or even. 2x plus 1 is odd. This quantity, definitely it is odd regardless of what x is, whether it's even or odd. Do you understand? So one more time, an odd number is represented as 2x plus 1. So now let's do the problem that I had for today. We actually haven't done what I actually wanted to do today, which is something that we're going to do now. I need the room, so I need to erase some things. Let's erase this top part. So, one more time, any odd odd number in the language of algebra is always to be represented as 2x plus 1. Now if you represent an odd number with an x in a simple problem, in a very simple problem, if I tell you that I have an odd number and when I add 3 to it, I get 6. What is that odd number? Well, if I have some odd number and if you use x to represent it, let's erase all of this thing. Actually, I need the room. You already got it. An odd number is to be represented like this. For example, if I tell you that I have some odd number and when I add 3 to it, I get 6. What is that odd number? Well, that odd number is 3. Here we got away by representing the odd number with simply as x and not doing it properly, which is 2x. It should have been like this, 2x plus 1 plus 3, some odd number. This is any old odd number, any old odd number. Any odd number. This is how we represent it. Plus a 3 more to it gives me 6. This is the correct equation. That wasn't the correct equation. The reason we got away with it, we have still found that the odd number is 3, is because it's such a simple equation. But as life gets complicated, as the algebra problem gets complicated, as we get into more complex, more complicated word problem, and if you get in the bad habit of doing it like this, you're going to pay a price in the future. You're going to end up getting a wrong answer. This is how it should have been represented. In which case, in this equation, we will solve for x and you will find that x will turn out to be 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3, and therefore you will say that the odd number that we're looking for is 3, just like we found here. I want to use a different variable here so that we don't get confused. This is a different quantity. So in essence what it is y equals this quantity. Y equals 2x plus 1. It should have been written as 2x plus 1. You understand? So don't get sloppy. Don't get in the bad habit. Because once you get in the bad habit in the early stage of the game, it's just like a child. Once the child gets in the bad habit and you grow up and then that's it, it sticks with you. Don't do that. As I told you before, on the very first day of the course, my intention when I started this project is to teach somebody algebra, somebody who had never had algebra. So that's what I'm assuming. So if you're one of those people, and if you're learning algebra from scratch, I want to make sure that you learn it proper way and don't get sloppy. An odd number is to be represented as is to be represented as 2x plus 1. Which variable you use is up to you, but it has to be represented as 2x plus 1. An even number, if somebody says an even number, if the problem mentions the word even number, an even number is to be represented as 2 times some number, 2 times n, or 2 times x, or 2 times y, or 2 times p, whatever it is. Do you understand? So here's the question for today. What is the odd number? What is the odd number that comes after 2x plus 1. We know 2x plus 1 represents some odd number. The question simply is, what is the next odd number? Well, odd numbers by their nature, since we're talking about something that comes after it, we're talking about a consecutive odd number, and therefore the very next odd number, whatever the previous odd number was, whatever it is, we do not know what it is, but we know for a fact that the next one is going to be 2 more than that. For example, if the previous one was a 7, the next odd number, the odd number that comes after 7 is going to be 9, 2 more than 7. If the previous one was 101, the next one is going to be 103, and so on and so forth. How do we represent it? Like this. We take this quantity, 2x plus 1, and we add 2 to it, that's all. We add 2 to it. So the answer to this question, what is the odd number that comes after 2x plus 1? The answer is, that odd number is 2x plus 3. Voila, that's it, that's your answer. Let's do one more. Let's do one more. What is the odd number that comes before 2x minus 1? Well, the one that comes before it has got to be 2 less than that. That's got to be 2 less than that. Positive 1 and a negative 2 is going to give us negative 1. Voila, that's it. So if somebody asks you to write 3 consecutive odd numbers, 3 consecutive odd numbers written in the language of algebra would be 3 consecutive odd numbers written in the language of algebra would be, of course this part was not necessary, obviously, so that's what we are here for. We are here to learn algebra. Would be, well, the middle one, you start out the middle one is 2x plus 1. I said 2x plus 1, 2n plus 1, same thing. That's how we represent an odd number. The one that comes after it is going to be 2 more than that, which is 2n plus 1 plus 3, plus 2, 2n plus 1 plus 2. So it's going to be 2n plus 3. The one that comes before it is 2n plus 1 minus 2, or 2n minus 1. So that's how we represent 3 consecutive odd number in the language of algebra. So now, if you have a word problem which calls for 3 consecutive odd numbers and you have to use them to set up certain equation, this is how you would use it. Do you understand? If it goes on and says something like that, the sum of the 3 consecutive odd number is 3 times some number, some other number or something, well, in that case it's very important that you set up the equation properly. Do you understand? That's all. And that's all I have for today. That's it. We're done for today. I will see you tomorrow on day number 156, where we will solve a problem dealing with the concept of 3 consecutive either odd numbers or even numbers. Alright? I'll see you tomorrow on day number 156.